Okay. Okay, I think I've got this now. Maybe not. There we go. Okay, welcome to today's webinar, the weekly webinar we do. Today's topic is the third part of Kaizen Initiative, the closure of sustaining the gains. For those of you who attended the first two, we'll connect the dots and close this out today. What's the agenda? I will do a very quick recap on what is Kaizen, a Kaizen event, and the two stages we did before, prep and executing the event. And then we'll get into today's topic is how to make sure that we get the best results or sustain the gains from doing a Kaizen improvement or Kaizen event. There are certain milestones like 30, 60, 90-day review, and then the activities which happen in the middle to ensure that after the Kaizen event, all the goodwill and all the good stuff quick hits we got done, we can implement them into our existing process and improve the baseline. Okay, so what is Kaizen? Japanese word, Japanese term, popularized in Japan. It's a very simple continuous improvement method. The two syllables, Kai and Zen, literally translates change and goodness. In essence, there's two different ways you can describe it: change for good, change for better. Change for better really means that you want to go better than before. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to go from step one to the step end. And you do like step change improvement. That's more of a philosophy here. And then change for good means you're not going to go backwards. So once you made the change to for better, whatever it was, you're going to try to lock in those improvements, usually with standards or some kind of a controlled process. So we'll talk about some of them today. Okay, so again, from the first and second series of this three-part series, we did prep, which was the plan stage of doing the Kaizen improvement. The Kaizen problem-solving process. It's laid out in Plan, Do, Check, Act, or Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control methodologies. They both are very known, systematic way of problem-solving. So Plan is all about making sure you pick the right problem, you set the right objectives, right KPIs, right scope, right team members, and you establish a charter that can serve the basis all the way through the process. And then you measure how good we are right now, or how bad we are right now, and what we want to do, right? So establishing some kind of a baseline and making sure we have the right measures and right KPIs in place. Then the event itself, which was the second part of the Kaizen series, we actually do the analysis and a bit of improve. Analysis is all about lean identification of waste. Once you've identified those wastes, what causes those wastes, so what are the root causes? And then if we can get to some kind of a cause and effect, we can prioritize which of the root causes we want to improve upon, either eliminate them or mitigate against them. And then the improvement is about that, is process mapping the old versus new way and new solutions. How are we going to try to improve on the root causes? If time allows, then try from some of those solutions and finally start creating a new standard of how we're going to do that. Why standard? We talked about, we need to make sure we don't go backwards. We come up with a new way and we stick to that new process. And then the two next phases, check and act, or continuing with improve and control, and building the change management or the engagement, comes the last part, which is after the event. Now we're into the closure piece, sustaining the gain. So here, what you're trying to do is you're trying to verify and validate the things that we agreed upon, we're actually doing them. So for example, can we verify we are doing things the way we said we were going to do out of the Kaizen event? And then are they making the difference? So how do you do that? You do some audits, you do implement some of your existing meetings, layered reviews, Gemba walks, and make sure that you start looking for some of these things we agreed upon, and with the lens of the planning or the prep phase when we had identified the right metrics. Depending on how things are going, you eventually establish procedures, tools, processes, some kind of a control methodology to make sure that we're looking at the right things. And if things are not going the way we're supposed to do, then we're taking actions, right? We're not losing the sight of the important things. And if things are going better, then there might be an opportunity to improve the process even further. Finally, training the right employees, because if we are going to come up with a new way of doing it, everybody has to be trained, everybody has to be communicated, and we have to publish these results, drive the positive recognition and tie in with other initiatives. Really, the whole process about making sure that this is not the end. Now we need to take the next step and so forth. Okay, so let's get to the last part of this Kaizen series webinars. Before I get to my next slide, I just want to make sure here, like in my experience, I mentioned this in the very first part as well, people are generally good at doing the Kaizen event itself because there's a lot of motivation, a lot of excitement to do the event, but the prep and closure is where people fall apart. And this is where really, if you did the prep properly, then your Kaizen event is going to deliver a lot more value. And if you do the closure properly, you're going to make sure that you sustain it and enable the next step improvement. So it has to be done properly. Don't just kind of keep this and not just like, it's not just about creating a SOP. There's more to it. Let's look at that. So obviously at the end of the Kaizen event, you will have some kind of action tracker. Some of the actions will be completed within the Kaizen event that's designed by that. But then what is left over, we need to finalize those things, right? So finalize new processes, maybe there's maps, maybe verbiages, maybe there is some sketches which need to happen, some drawings which needs to be completed. And they will be finished very first after the event, because that will be required to communicate and train people on it. Then complete any standards that need to be finished next, as they will be required to start training. Review actions with leadership to prioritize, assign ownership, establish due dates, and review protocols over the next few months. Usually we try to do this at the end of the Kaizen event. When you're doing the report out, you're already asking the question to leadership, saying, okay, which of these we want to prioritize, who's going to be responsible, who's going to own these new processes. Usually if there's an existing process owner of the scope area you are in, they'll be the right person for it. Include backlog items into the review to either combine these with other improvement initiatives, so other Kaizens, other projects, or maybe some of them can be done partially now if the leadership wants to prioritize them or defer them to a later date. Communication plan, we talked about that. So what goes in a communication plan? You need to make sure you're capturing what is exactly to be communicated, who needs to know and why is it important, and who will be doing the communication. When and how the communication will take place should be the last piece, but it's required. So you have some kind of you don't have to use this kind of tracker that I've shown you there. This is what we use. But if you're making sure those 4 things are being done and you're actually thinking about them, you're asking those questions, then you're not going to miss out on communicating why are we doing this new process, where it came from, what is the important piece of it. In finalizing standards, the most important thing for me is people to understand in the communication and in the training phase is that this is an agreement right now between everybody that that's the way we'll get the work done until a better way is found. So it's not going to be locked in and we're stuck with this. We're going to do what we said we think is the best way right now, and until a better way is found. Once the better way is found, you're going to move on to the next standard, right? When you're building the standard, make sure you're including all key factors, be it health and safety, quality, cost, environment, whatever it might be, which is important to deliver the value. You're identifying that in the standard, and you're identifying some kind of a handshake or start and end points with preferably with pictures of what is considered good and bad. So if you do that, you have usually a one-pager, maybe both-sided, 8.5/11 page, which talks about here's the key things in this standard, and for you to know yourself without asking or waiting for somebody to confirm that the work you did is good, you have some kind of a visuals, pictorial or whatever it might be, telling you this is good or bad. You can move on to the next step or not. This will help remove a lot of wasted effort and quality issues or health and safety issues, whatever the important thing was identified out of the Kaizen. And then you have to make sure also it will ensure that this is not just another SOP which sits into a binder somewhere and never gets used, right? The one pager can be posted right at the workplace and used in the audits with Gemba walks. Then training plan. Usually when you have standards and new processes finalized and agreed upon, then you create a training plan, and it's similar to the communication plan we talked about, but obviously it's different. What exactly to be taught, who needs to be taught, and why is it important, who will be doing the training and how will they provide the training, and then when it will take place. Really what you're trying to do is, now we have new ways, new things to do, and we should identify, is it a standard, is it a routine, is it a pre-op checklist, whatever we came up with as a new way of doing it. We need to then teach it to the people who are going to be in the main area where this is going to be impacting, right? Communication is a lot bigger. It usually employs all the people who are part of it, be the process, be the suppliers and the customers of that process, or the leadership, or people who do need to be informed of the changes. But training is about specific of the people who are actually going to be living that new process. And then who needs to taught it? So sometimes it could be the people who were part of the Kaizen event itself, right? People who came up with why we're doing this new way. People who are technically, people who are involved in maybe creating some kind of technical document or technical sketch or technical new process. Sometimes you may even need a health safety rep if it's about health and safety. Technical, I talked about already, but could be somebody external, like a vendor, which comes in and helps you deliver the new way. And the idea is that you should know upfront who needs to be the one teaching, and at what intervals, and what is going to be the medium. Is it going to be your lineup meetings, your huddles? Is it going to be actually at the workplace? And what exactly of the piece you're trying to teach there? So think about that and then follow that schedule. Then we hit the first milestone, 30-day review. So this is 30-day after the Kaizen event has ended, and you're looking at the status of action items: completed, in progress, deferred, canceled. Help required from sponsor, owner, leadership. So things which are not moving forward because there's some kind of a huddle, and maybe we can get the help to remove that barrier from it, or get extra effort or resources that are required. Status of the communication plan, status of the training plan, how good we're doing. The idea is by 30-day we should be mostly complete through it. And then we do a review of the leading KPIs. So again, very quickly, in the prep stage we talked about 3 different kinds, and we're going to talk about 3 different kinds here: the leading, lagging, and vulnerable KPIs. But at the end of 30-day reviews, what you're worried about is the leading KPIs, stuff which should be changing directly as you make the new process, right? The idea is, by now, if we did the things properly, we should start to see a change, or the needle move in the leading KPIs at least. Verification of standard is next. So this is after 30 days. You've gone through rolling out the standards, finalizing standards, rolling it out, training, communicating. Now it's time to go see if these standards are working. Not that the improvement has happened, the standards are being used the way they were intended. So who verifies it? Could be done by supervisors, superintendents, managers on their area visits, walks, Gemba walks is part of the same process. If your Gemba walk already exists in your organization, then it is quite easy. You take these standards and pull them into your Gemba walk list. If they don't exist, maybe that's the best time to start a Gemba walk kind of process as well, which will help you do 2 things in parallel. But the idea is, what we're trying to say, we agreed on a new way of doing things. Are we actually doing that, right? And if different people are doing it, different levels of doing it, we still need to standardize how people are going to audit that, or how people are going to identify or verify the standards are being used. They don't need to be full audits of a whole area. Like, you don't have to see it from the step 1 to the last step. It usually is ideal if you go there and you're observing a piece or a step, or step 2, step 3, or a few steps of a new standard. Then that's what you observe. And the next time somebody else comes in and they're going to be in a different part of the standard, then they observe that, right? So it doesn't need to be extra time consuming. It just needs to verify that we have adopted the new standard. Here's an example of the drilling one. Like if somebody's observing a drilling, the component may be drilling of a hole, adding, removing a pipe, greasing, casing. There's a lot of different steps. The idea is, what did you observe? And then can you verify the essence of the standard that we had established? People understand it and they're doing it. Then you get to the second milestone of the 60-day review. The idea here is, we still need to look at the status of action items. Most likely, most of your action items that we agreed upon should be complete by now. And if there are not, we need to start deciding: are we canceling it? Are we deferring it? Do we need extra help here? Is this something we did not understand? Can we take it offline and attach it to a different initiative? But things have to be decided quickly here. Are we following the process as intended? That should also be part of the 60-day review. So all those audits, the Gemba walk things we just talked about, you get looked at with the Kaizen leadership and the team to see how good we did. Review of leading and lagging KPIs happened here. So leading, we had started looking at 30 days, after 30 days, but now you're looking at both KPIs and seeing if there's a movement in lagging as well. Also look at the vulnerable KPIs. So very quickly, the vulnerable KPIs were something we had identified in the prep stage, were the metrics or the KPIs which we did not want to negatively impact by doing this new process, a new way of doing things out of the Kaizen event. So you want to review all three here and see if there is anything concerning or is everything going the way we thought it was going to go, right? And you can then adjust or take actions. Finding of any investigation into out of control points. So we just talked about that, right? So out of control points would be we're not following the standard the way we said, or standard is being followed the way we did, but we're not seeing the improvement we saw. So what to do with it? Any trends, anything statistically significant? So I won't spend too much time with defining what that is, but really is if you're following, let's say, a control chart methodology and you're plotting your data, you should be getting some signals of saying, oh, okay, things are getting better or worse, right? And now is the time to start identifying future owner of this process. So who's going to take over, especially if things are working well? We need to now start talking about how to hand over this process to that new owner from the Kaizen team. And so by the end of the last milestone, the 90 days, this process is ready to be handed over and become part of the, how we run the business. Not that there's going to be something new always, which has to be changed. Okay, so the next step after the 60 days, we need to archive project documents. This could be training documents for future personnel. So, people will change, teams will come and go. So you will have to make sure that it's now part of the new training process, incorporated with onboarding training. Same idea, right? New people will come, they all get some kind of onboarding. So if this is important enough, the process, we should have something about the standards in the onboarding training itself as well. And then some kind of periodical assessment methodology and documentation to make sure that two things, right? One, where if our controls are running well, then the periodical assessment will show us that we're still following the process, we'll still have the same improvement. And if our controls are not working well, then obviously you will see some kind of a dip in that assessment. But the second most important part of this is these assessments will also show you when the time is right to take the next step, right? Where you're starting to see some kind of signals or some kind of KPI change, which is showing you that you may be now limiting the performance because of the standard you have. There's other problems we can solve. There's other opportunities we can take to get even better. So the milestone 90-day follow-up meeting, usually with the team, the last time they're going to get together. So the questions you're trying to answer: is the process delivering the results as intended? So now it's all about, we had a business case out of the project charter. We have followed through by now the way we said we were going to improve. We verified that we're following the essence of it. We verified that some of the leading vulnerable lagging KPIs were working. So how much of the process did we actually improve against the business case? And if statistical significant gains, losses, we should quantify them, and then start talking about opportunities for the next step changes within the current scope. So maybe the Kaizen event you did got you to 60-70% of the business case you had, and now you have to start talking about how do we get to the rest of it. Or maybe you went beyond it, and now you say, oh, there's still more here. Maybe we underestimated the business case. So how do we improve? How do we go after the rest of it? Or now this has enabled, this Kaizen enabled us to do something even better in a different area, and we can start scoping out that Kaizen or that opportunity. Status of action items: help required from sponsor owner leadership is the last chance to get them involved, because after this, the tracker is going to disappear. And basically we're going to end the trial of the new process. It's now part of our process. There's no longer a push or a team of the Kaizen there to look after it. Status of audit plans, review of all KPIs, review of link initiative and path forward. So we just talked about it. Make sure that if there's any opportunities that are still to be taken, we are mapping that out into a next initiative of some sort. Project closure, hand over to the future owner. They must know at least how to audit, how to identify out of control event, investigate, and some kind of a project documentation they can use for the training and communication. Communicate lessons learned and recognize improvements achieved to operational, personal, and other business assets. So here's a good opportunity, especially if the Kaizen has delivered good results for it. It has developed a lot of excitement, a lot of change management, engaged workforce because they used to have problems. They no longer have those problems, and they have a feel-good story to tell. So get them to tell the story to other business assets, other areas of the operations. So you're driving that change management to do other initiatives. Publish results externally if possible. So we've done this a few times where if it's a good enough result and good enough story of how a business started and where they ended up, by following this process, you take it to some kind of a journal in the industry and get it published. Last slide here, just closing it out on the Kaizen webinar 3-part series. Really, the idea here is that it's one of the tools that most beneficial for stability related opportunities. And usually you want to start with the kind of issues and opportunities that exist in the process to ensure that you're not picking too big of a problem. The right scope is there. And I will just reiterate that the prep and closure, even though it may not sound as glorious, are very important for you to do them right to get the best result out of the Kaizen. Okay, so I'll stop here. Got a few more minutes, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask. And while people mulling over, obviously we'll publish this on our website as well as on the YouTube channel, the video, for people who may have joined later and missed out the first part. And the other 2 parts are already there. So if you want to watch all 3 together, you can do so. Go ahead, Angel.
Hey, Asim, great presentation. Got a question, just more for your for your opinion.
Sure.
The sponsor, would it be advantageous to have them part of the actual Kaizen event, actually be part of it, as opposed, the one that's is going to do the work and is going to own it, but have the actual sponsor? Because in some of the experiences I've had over the years, I've seen a lot of them, and the sponsor says, yeah, it's a great idea, let's do one, but they're not actively involved. They get those presentations at the different levels, but they're actively not involved, and therefore probably don't have a really good understanding that could eventually lead to maybe a bit more better support and maybe better embedment in the operation. So I just want to know what you think of that.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question, because part of the prep, that's what we talked about, that you need to make sure that they're involved throughout the whole process, right? So most likely sponsor, your process owners are the main guys you're dealing with when you're laying out what are the problems you're going to solve, who's going to be the team people, right? How are we going to measure it? Who's going to resources? All those people are involved in this preparing step, right? So you're talking back and forth. And yes, true that most likely the sponsor won't have the time, or sometimes it's there's always pros and cons on both sides, right? Sometimes you don't want them to attend because you have other people in the room which may not be opening up when that level of the leadership is present in the Kaizen event. But usually to counter it, what we do is you have daily touch points with these sponsors, right? So they will come in maybe at the beginning of the each day, and then at the end of the each day, to say where things are going, and if they have any questions which the team needs to look at to clarify, so sponsor is on board of the whole process, and they're not going to at the end say, oh, this doesn't work for me, or this didn't get to me where I thought I was going to go. So usually through the prep stage, you're aligning everything that they want to work upon, the issues that you can have, and then by the daily touch points, you're making sure that everybody's on board. So when the new process is presented at the end of the Kaizen event, there are no maybe I don't want to do this, right? It needs to get to a level where you're getting those answers, or those alignments done well. Now, the question of can we get them in the Kaizen events? There are people who want to be in the Kaizen event. I just will caution people that if they're going to be, they have to be aware of that some people may not be opening up to air the frustrations, the issues, because usually a sponsor will be at a higher level in the organization, and if you're talking with people in the team who are multiple levels below, they may not be easily opening up. So you just have to be aware of that, and if person wants to be in there, you need to make sure that there is some kind of a process where we are um, letting people know that they can, whatever they say in this room is going to stay in this room. It's not going to have an impact. Everybody, the ranks are checked at the door, all that good stuff. But it usually it's a bit harder in the first few days, anyways. Did that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Perfect. Anybody else? Okay. I mean, we're at 12:30 now, so if nobody else has any questions, thank you for attending. And next week it's again my webinar, so I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Okay. Are you still there? Are you sticking around on purpose, Carmen?